What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Split Screen D&D, the place where we're attacking all things Dungeons and Dragons from both sides of the screen. Ooh, some war drums. I think I'm hearing war drums.
That's actually kind of almost appropriate. Some serious tone.
Pretty serious tone because this is going to be a serious vid. My name's Tom Quinn, resident Dungeon Master here at Modern Myth.
And I'm Josh Winans, resident player character here at Modern Myth.
And this is kind of a special video in that this is a video that we made really to we got a fairly substantial outpouring on social media coming off of, yes, thank you, by the way, just for all of the engagement, but coming off of the original video that we did, link, it will be in the description to that video, of OSR versus 5e. And I don't know if versus is the right vernacular, but kind of talking about the differences between those systems. And I guess that video really was an assessment of what we at modern tables might be able to take away from that. We had kind of a not insubstantial number of inquiries saying, run your players through some OSR and then make a follow-up where they can give their opinions. So that is this video.
Yeah, but before we get right into the juicy bits, hey there, Internet. Wow, you're looking good. I noticed that a lot of you have been hitting that like and comment. It's going nice right now. But have you hit that subscribe button? Maybe that bell. I'm just saying, take it to that next level. And, not to sound needy, but, we got a Patreon account and, a couple bucks our way, doesn't hurt our feelings.
There you go. As shameless as ever.
That was shameless. That was bad.
But that's all right. That's all right. No, I think let's dive into the meat and potatoes of this. So as I said, we had a number of requests of people basically saying, great, we saw the interaction. I was kind of trying to break down my thoughts on OSR for you. And they basically said they want to hear it from the player's mouth once you've got, once you're shin deep in some of that sweet OSR. So I just to start, to give everyone at home the context of what exactly it was that we ran through. So because OSR can be many things. In our case, this was old school essentials. We were playing advanced, so they had some access to some of the additional additional character options. That said, I was really trying to take pains to ensure that what was transpiring at the table, I was really trying to put a barrier between just the subconscious injection of anything modern that I might have. That was one of the big barriers for me in not running something homebrewed for you guys, because I just went, I really want this to have an old school voice to it. And so we were running old school essentials, and we were running the Tomb of the Serpent Kings, which is maybe this isn't a like for like comparison, but I'm just going to use kind of the Lost Mines of Fendelver of OSE. There, at least some subset of the old school community is regarding it as a great starter module for, and I think in the module anyways, they really outlined their reasoning for putting certain things as kind of teaching devices for new players.
Right, which is and I think I'll try to be vague now. I know it's a module. I don't want no spoiler alerts.
We will do everything. In fact, I really think this conversation is less an analysis of the specifics of what we're transpiring at the table, and more again existing in that ideological ethos space. There are some very fundamental differences, I think, that create those different tones
between 5e and OS. Oh my goodness, yes.
And so I think let's just start from the beginning. And it's something I got a number of people reaching out in the comments. Kudos to you guys. It was good on you for pointing out that our first video, I could not believe, as I was reading the comment, I went, holy crap. We barely touched on character creation, and we did a massive. I mean, there are massive implications buried in the character creation process, really for the ethos as a player moving forward.
Right.
So talk with me a little bit about that difference. I mean, it's because I feel like, especially someone who, I think the quote that hangs over your head is I like to feel powerful.
Yes.
Did you feel powerful during the character creation process?
No, and I even had some decent roles on some character creations. My first character I started with was actually like a 16 intelligence. We were rolling 3d6.
Right.
And but he also was like, I was flush with cash. Like, it was crazy. And it was amazing how important that
and
was.
so likable.
Yeah, he had a 5 charisma, and I leaned into it really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as like the character creation, it's such a different, because I'm a big believer in planning your character's path before you play. I do 1 through 20. I won't say that's how you should play the game at all, but that's what I do. And in this one, no, you're just 1, and you're just like, how can I make it's every little, like the starting equipment in 5e, you kind of don't give a shit about. Not really.
Yeah.
But in
they certainly have low equipment as a whole, I think, have lower implications.
Oh my goodness, how important knowing how many rations you're going to be having, how many torches, my gosh, like things I never would have thought of.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned that about equipment. I'm certainly including equipment as part of your, let's say, character creation process. Because I think so much of that weight that equipment holds in old school really hinges on the fact that exploration is so much more important.
Yes.
So for starters,
Yeah.
Some of the major differences, obviously, being you're rolling fewer dice. So I mean, your
3d6.
Your net character should be by numbers weaker than any 5th edition character, but maybe more importantly, you don't get to choose where those numbers land.
That is huge. Like when I came to the table and I started rolling up the characters, I wasn't like, I'm going to play a wizard. No, that's not what it was. It's like, okay, let's roll and see what I get. Okay, what I kind of went for is like, okay, what is the most exotic thing I can play as with what's the coolest thing that,
given your abilities.
So
what can you talk a little bit coming from the 5th edition perspective, which I think in with regard to character creation, you really are a mastermind of your character. You get to design every nook and cranny. You can move your stats around to really fit what you're after. Pros, cons. What was your experience of kind of stepping into the shoes of a character that more or less was procedurally generated?
Yeah, even the quirks were procedurally generated, which is super fun. But it was, because this was kind of just an experience. We weren't like, okay, we are switching gears. We are no longer 5e. We are now OSR. No, it was more just like, let's just dip our feet in here and just see what this is about. It was a freeing experience because I didn't have to have all that, what is it going to be like at 20? What's his character arc? Okay, I need a backstory. Why is he doing? It's a basic thing like, he was a Balin Smith, came from a line of blacksmiths. I mean, that was my character, Balin, and that was it.
Yeah,
like it wasn't too big.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I can certainly see how coming from the 5th edition side, you might have players who feel robbed of that character creation experience.
Yeah,
I think the other side of that coin is you have been liberated of all that work.
That's what I think. I think I made the comment during the one shot. And if you haven't checked out our split screen on one shots, I think you've also done a DM on one shots as well. And you've done an interview with One Shot Mill. Man, we've done a lot of one shot stuff.
I haven't done any DM in the PM on it, but one shot Mill basically counted for both. So.
Okay, there we go. But it's a palate cleanser. It was just fun. It was like, you have your routine that you do every day. You show up to your work every day. Then all of a sudden, some guy's like, hey, let's go do something else. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's go do something else. Break up the monotony.
Ditch work and go do something else?
Yeah. Let's go swim in a swimming pool. Bad analogy, because really OSR is like swimming in a boiling lake full of piranhas trying to kill you. But I mean, it was just refreshing in the character creation. And it is just fun.
Yeah. I think certainly, again, it's tough for me to speak directly to the character, or I should say the player side of it, because as a DM, but I can absolutely see, because that process is so lightweight by
Mhm.
comparison, your ability to literally, tonight, if I went like, hey, you want to run?
Oh, yeah.
Like 5 minutes from now, your character's done up,
Mhm.
and all of the trappings that kind of come along with that fifth
Mhm.
edition process.
All that weight,
Yeah.
you know?
And the interesting thing is I think the onus in fifth edition for the character creation process
Mhm.
is to add all of this interesting weight
Mhm.
into your character
Yep.
before we've even started the game.
Yep.
And in old school, obviously, you're just being given
Yeah.
I say given, but you roll up your character.
The dice are giving you the character.
Yeah.
You're not coming up with the character. The dice are giving you the character to a certain extent. But
from there, it's up to you to add those trappings to your character
Mhm.
through gameplay at the table. And
Yeah.
and that's a huge, a huge, I think, ideological difference between the two systems.
Yeah.
And one that certainly has been, we're not the first to point that out by any means.
Yeah.
No,
We're all original here.
that's right. But so coming off of character creation,
Yes.
before we depart character creation, you already
Yeah.
touched a little bit on the equipment side
Yeah,
of things.
a little bit. Yeah.
We have not touched yet on the hirelings.
That was fun.
And the interesting thing about that is, in talking with a number of full-time old schoolers, I've heard from a number of them that hirelings aren't a thing at their table at all.
Okay.
And I can see the quintessential image of the party
Mm-hmm.
doesn't often have a lot of red shirts running around you.
Right.
But I think by design, the system has intended that those be an element.
I'm not gonna,
game.
and I'm not gonna lie. It was kind of one of those things where like, that's what you do. That's what I heard that you do. So that's what I did. I never ran into a situation like we never, that I was like, man, I'm really glad we have this hireling. That never happened, but I could see it come into play. But yeah, for me, hirelings, because equipment is such a big deal, and I could see that like, oh, how heartbreaking would it be? You get your treasure. You worked it. You were so smart. You disabled every trap, and you don't have this. You can't carry it out. I'm sorry. There goes your levels. There goes. Oh my, that would break my heart.
Well, I think that really is. I mean, certainly pertinent to hirelings. If part of the reason they're there is as a pack mule.
Yeah. But you're talking about the fighting as well. We didn't. Our guys weren't fighting hirelings.
No, well, I guess minimally so, and part of that came down to your negotiations with them initially.
I had a charisma of 5,
bringing them on board, and I think, the whole party was
we're literally low on charisma.
really, really not potent at getting people behind your.
We had a
your-
weird party, dude.
your,
We had a
your
real
cause,
weird party.
yeah. But so pivoting out of the character creation
Yes, sir.
space and getting into kind of the meat and potatoes. Obviously, there's a fair portion of the game that's a departure from kind of the unified die 20 system that 5th edition operates on. I didn't get the sense from any of you that ended up being any kind of major shake up
Nope.
at the table. What I would be really curious about in the game with regard to combat, because I really think the two things, because social kind of is, I think, on both sides of the coin. It's a lot of it is what you make of it, what your table makes of it. I mean, every table role plays differently.
Yep.
And I think every table just kind of has a different ethos for their social interactions that are playing out at the table. That said, I think rules as written, 5th edition and old school, have very different prescriptions when it comes to combat and when it comes to exploration. And so as kind of a starting point, because 5th edition rules as written anyways is a very combat oriented rule system.
Right. Yeah, it's all about those battles.
Talk with me a little bit about combat and I guess kind of the differences, the notable differences. I know I have my own list, but what was, I guess it probably should be stated at this point that you guys had some retainer characters rolled up.
Oh yeah,
just
we
as
I
a,
got
you know,
yeah.
as
I almost
good
wanted
practice.
to. Yeah.
But so ultimately ended up being the case that two of the party members ended up falling.
Yep.
And that both to undead, one to a skeleton, one to a mummy, or a mummy's hand.
Yeah, as well as the mummy's
anyways.
hand. We never reached a full mummy.
But with that in mind, I guess talk with me about you. I was about to use the 5th edition nomenclature of you kick the door in, but let's just say for unification's sake, you very cautiously approach the door,
Right.
open it up. Combat is on the other side. Talk me through a little bit, kind of what now that you've been on that side. What's that look like?
Yeah.
From a 5th edition perspective.
Well, in fifth edition, if you kick the door and you see a dude, you're like, "Fuck yeah, let's go bash some skulls."
Right.
Like, I don't think there's very rarely a time when I'm like, "Should I run?" Very rarely.
Right. I would actually say that is an Achilles heel of a lot of 5th edition players / parties,
because there's not that weight of the potential.
Right. And I think that is symptomatic of a failing of the system to deliver a sense of maybe I should get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
But talk with me a little bit about
there.
how that contrasts with.
It's a risk reward weight you have to make. So it's like, one, are you in a position where you can run away? Okay. Once you make that decision, like, okay, if you can, like, but even then, like, if it's one thing and you got 5 guys, okay, maybe you got your numbers on your side.
Right.
And then it's something. But if it's like, oh crap, they're like,
this is an even fight.
Yeah, like this. If it's an even fight, if you're not vastly outnumbering them, you're probably going to lose someone. If there's one guy, you probably might lose.
No doubt. I mean, at low level, one hit connecting will often drop
Right.
someone. So
yeah, it comes to like you want to minimize the damage. So like, there's one instance where I almost like sacrificed my character because I was like, oh, I don't want the rest of my party to die. So if I can absorb as many hits as I can, because in the rule set, once you decide you're going to attack something, you have to do that. If they fall, you have to continue to attack their dead corpse.
you're talking about so you're talking about the kind of the alternate initiative structure.
Okay, is this alternate? I'm not quite sure of all the rules.
Yeah.
So that's how we played it. So I was like, okay, cool. So if I can get everyone to attack me, even if I fall, the rest of the guys will continue to attack me, which will either give my party an opportunity to attack or to run away. Either way, it's fine. Which ultimately I died, which was fine. So yeah, it's a totally different tactics.
Yeah. Well, and so that was one thing I really wanted to pick your brain on is what I'm just going to call, it's really more combat structure than it is just initiative structure, because I think one of the and actually I think it does a better job, the what I'll call combat structure of old school does a better job of capturing the sense that all of these actions
That is a fruity beer. Ooh.
Good on you.
Tuesday.
That all of these actions are taking place simultaneously. For the same reason, I think what you were alluding to with regard to like the action commitment is the fact that you are committing, all the characters are committing their movement simultaneously. Someone's not moving and then attacking, and then they go, "Oh, they killed him. I guess I'm going over here."
Right. It's a totally different.
And I there's actually a lot I like about that, because I think 5th edition basically goes like, "Hey, here's a bunch of peeks into the meta in real time."
Yes.
And if you wanted to be really strict, you could go, No, you don't know that. It's combat is really a space where it becomes near impossible to separate character and player knowledge in 5th edition. I think the system is built a lot more soundly, combat-wise, to just eliminate your option of taking those actions. So I was just curious what that experience was like, because as someone who probably your favorite part of the game is
combat,
and specifically kind of the battle map minis tactics kind of combat. what would you say if I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about grafting this system into 5th edition"?
I like it for
I'll take it with the grain of salt of you've been playing 5th edition's version
yeah,
for
yeah,
years, and
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't like it just because of the way the fifth edition system is set up. That it's such a narrative based game that you grow attached. Like it's fine if your character dies, but it needs to be a huge momentous occasion, right? In 5th edition and in OSR, drop of a hat, you could die. Right. And it makes a little bit of a different story. So I don't like that. But I do like the different tactics. It's different, like it's a different game.
Yeah.
And it forces you to think of different, like just differently about combat. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's you play a certain video game for a while, then you play a different one, and you learn its rule set. And it's nothing wrong with that.
And I guess I don't want to jump off of the combat train too soon.
Yeah.
But the other aspect, and the one that I really think is, and I would say, I think it's fair to say, the aspect that I saw everyone struggle with the most, go figure, existed in the exploration pillar. And
yeah, I did.
The exploration in old school demands an entirely different level of specificity in the way in which you're interacting with the environment.
And creative play.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
So,
I mean, for starters, and I mean, more or less, as far as I'm concerned, these should be removed from 5th edition anyways, but remove any passive related checks, remove these blanket boldened checks like perception and investigation style checks.
Even that, like history checks and like all the intelligence based checks in 5e are like hint systems.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. And I would say that effectively, I think
in some ways, I'm sorry, I should say all intelligence. There's others too.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. Is in 5th edition, you really are. A player might be engaging with the world in an investigation check in hopes that they get a better grip on a narrative thread or a plot hook or whatever that they're trying to follow.
Right.
And in old school, we touched on this a little bit in the original video. It's not so much how good is your character at investigating the environment, is how good are you as a player at investigating the environment.
That's so huge.
That's a huge, in fact,
huge departure.
I might argue that that's one of the largest differences. And I would even argue that it's one of the largest strengths in terms of, and I know that's a big departure from 5th edition.
Yes.
But I think when you talk about lending weight to moving through a dungeon.
Yes.
Does making a perception check or knowing that you might just be overlooking something as a player,
that's so
lend
huge.
more tension to that experience. And and I think that tension could exist in that old school environment when there's not a single trap in the entire dungeon. You don't know that. And,
that's the thing. Oh.
And the knowing or not knowing is something that you kind of expect those skills to provide you in a 5th edition environment.
Yes.
Like, well, I've got phenomenal perception. I feel pretty good that there's nothing here.
Yes.
And it's like, you can't say the same thing about a character in old school.
Yeah. Did you ever play games like Zork?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what it reminded me of very much. It's like you got a wall of text as you entered a room, and you had to decide what in that wall of text was important. And not everything mentioned was important. And even if it was important, it might not be important at that time.
Or in the way you think it's important.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Which is always a weakness of mine. I've always sucked at those games. But again, I've almost started now to think of the intelligence and wisdom, history, arcana, perception, and investigation as hints.
Yeah.
Like
I think that's a really good way of classifying.
I don't know how to solve this problem. Oh, there's these things over here. I don't know. Can I make a roll to see if I can get a little hint?
Right.
And if you roll well, you get a little hint. OSR doesn't let you get hints. At least not that I could figure out.
I would say the hints that you will get are from you as a player deciding to engage with things
Right.
in a way that would provide you a hint. There's no role to allow you to do it.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's one of the moments, maybe one of the greatest by greatest, I mean, most vast moments in which the player and the character extrapolate from one another. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's not a good thing. Like, it's not a great thing to go, I as a player am out of ideas.
Yeah.
But my character's really smart. So I'm going to roll and
Yeah.
now they're, you know, and because that's a double-edged sword. Your character might
'Cause it's
also be
almost a
really
crutch.
stupid.
Yeah.
And then you have to go, you know, and now you're in a space where you have to go, I've got ideas. I think I know what's going on, but I just better sit here and keep my mouth. And that's not, you know.
Yeah, I'll counter that real quick because I think that is a problem. And I would say if you run into that as a 5th edition, if you're like, oh man, I have a 6 intelligence, find ways to drop hints that doesn't rely on intelligence. But anyway, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I just think ultimately,
Sorry, had to drop some 5e knowledge on your bitch ass.
if you are having an insight as a player,
yeah,
that's an engaging thing. And to have to modify that insight because some numbers on your character sheet tell you,
I see what you're saying.
You'd have better or worse insights than that. I think that's something that old school has just kind of gotten right.
And I will say that unifies us as players a lot. Like when we're at 5e, we each have our own agendas. We each have our own, you know, why we're there, what our strengths are. And when I was playing, we were all just trying to survive and get treasure.
Right. And I think that's completely symptomatic of the fact that you're writing your stories as of session 1.
Right.
Not you've each written a story prior to showing up to session 1.
Right,
You know, I think that, so some of it is that, but I definitely think that, I definitely think that that's some of the innate conflict that might exist in kind of the very narrative centric, every character's shown up. And like I said, I don't consider that a bad thing on the 5e side.
No.
In fact, it's something we tend to lean into when we're starting campaigns. But certainly on the old school side, like I said, it's always this double-edged sword, I feel like, of you can look at it as either I didn't have the opportunity to do that, or I was unburdened of the necessity to do that. So,
well, I guess if you're to ask me, which would I prefer, exploration in 5e or OSR? The problem is, and this is an individual thing, I think I mentioned it, I'm not really good at the creative, like, oh, you find a torch in one room and then a medallion in the other, and if you combine the torch with the medallion, you make the super secret thing to open the door, and I'm not good at that stuff. Excuse me. Oh, is that the word I'm looking for? Hi? What is it? Anyway. But I'm not good at that. Versus 5e, which I kind of mentioned, has that almost like a hint system where you can kind of like feed me some stuff and then I can figure it out from there. I know this might be just like I'm just not that smart. But
well, the thing is, I think about that might be the vein, I think, of OSR that's as much of a learned skill as any other aspect of the table.
That's true.
Is the more you are, and for the exact same reason that you hear stories of, let's call it, I think probably it's fair, it would be fair to say 5th edition tables who have learned some adventuring bad habits, and those bad habits get them into some deep shit when they dip into the old school, just because becoming accustomed to walking into a dungeon and going like, are there any traps here? And you go like, well, what do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Can I just make a perception check to see if any? No, that's not how it works.
A singular roll to just cover this whole floor. Is that cool?
Yeah, you're the rogue. It's cool.
Yeah. And the thing is that no doubt, like those aren't tools as players that you're asked to sharpen in 5th edition. I think to your point, like I said, obviously different players are going to have different strengths and weaknesses in every aspect of the game.
Right.
But even a player who that portion of the game isn't their strong suit, I think would find themselves getting much stronger rapidly the more time they're spending thinking about the world in that way. And I think from an investment in, we've talked about in the lore episodes, we talked about being invested in your environment. I don't think there's even close to a comparison between the level of investment you'll have as you become proficient with engaging with the environment in a way that keeps you alive,
Right.
and making a perception check. There's just, I mean, I just
Yeah.
don't, again,
Yeah.
it's obviously there's a huge camp of people who just go, I want to make my perception checks and that's it. I do think, if for no other reason than to say you've gone through these steps, players should take an opportunity to be in that old school space so that they can at least think about the game and go, would I, if given a chance, get
Right.
more out of this experience if I was more versed in that style of play?
Okay,
I'm not saying you would or wouldn't, but
Yeah.
I think that there's at least the question certainly.
Yeah,
is
for
there.
sure. And it makes me think, it's just such a different style of play. So I'm just thinking, comparing Diablo 3, sure, why not? And like Dark Souls, right? Both are kind of like in that the same vein, right? But Diablo 3 is a button masher. You go through and all you just whirling, you're killing everything, you're collecting loot, boom. You don't even care about traps. Versus like Dark Souls, where I like Diablo 3 did such a good job of teaching you, like, it was baby steps. Dark Souls is like, welcome to Dark Souls, bitch.
Yeah.
Did you did you not get that flask to bring you back to life? Well, then you're fucked.
Well, and something that I like that you touched on there. I might counter that analogy. Actually, I really like your original text-based analogy.
Oh, Zork.
Right out of the gate.
Yeah.
Only because I think there's a level of meticulousness.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
But what I
Yeah,
love
that's
about
true.
the Dark Souls analogy
Yeah.
is OSR, and you guys found this out firsthand,
Mm.
will you learn via the mortality of your character.
Yes, that's
Fifth edition, you learn by maybe getting your butt kicked a little bit, and then
maybe
you lick
and
your
then you
wounds.
respawn back in the moment, kind of. No,
Then
no,
you
yeah.
well, and I mean you really, I think, hit that on the head. I mean, in terms of like the aloofness with which you just regarded death in fifth edition,
Yeah.
is a perfect example of, again, whether you want to think of it as a shortcoming of the system or
Right.
not, relative to OSR,
Right.
The idea that you just got full blown laid low,
Right.
and someone went, and then you're popped back up and you're
Right.
fighting for him. I think the trade-offs between, I mean, I guess to some extent Diablo, I mean, you die in Diablo and you respawn, and but people play the Souls-like games because they want to learn through death. To some extent, the roguelike genre as a whole the same could be said about. But I definitely like the idea that that mortality is your tutor, and you can almost track your proficiency
By not dying.
Yeah, well, I
No,
think
it's true.
I mean, by the time you have a character who is level 3, level 5,
Right.
level 7, that tells you that you are learning the world. That tells you that you are becoming a more proficient explorer.
Yep.
And the beauty is, or adventurer, I should say, the beauty is, much like we talked about that extrapolation between player and character, when you hit level 5 old school, you as a player,
How do you reach level 5? How?
drop it in the comments. No, but think about this. When you reach level 5,
Yeah.
you as a player are a far better adventurer, not your character. I mean, your character has gotten better,
Yeah.
but the reason you as a
Have
player
survived is because of me.
guided that character to
Yeah.
level 5 was because you were increasingly engaged, sharpening those tools, and
And there's such a reward that you get from that. Like when you're playing Dark Souls and you're like even the first enemy, and then you beat your first boss in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my, I did it. Not only could I kill all the, it is such, and personal satisfaction is so much higher. Don't get me wrong. I love games like, we're going on video games analogies. I'm hoping you can follow. Going like on the GTA or Red Dead Redemption. It's about the story, right? And you don't really get, you get slightly new abilities. Your red eye gets a little bit better, but you're still basically the same thing.
right,
But you don't, as a player, improve much.
right.
Versus Dark Souls, yeah, you're right. Oh, I can now counter so much better. I can parry and count. Like I know how to roll. I know the iframes now. Like
Right.
there's so much there.
Yeah.
But it's so much. Oh, sorry.
But I think that is a like I said a reasonable draw. There's an old comparison that it's probably been around as long as the Star Wars fan base and the Trekkies have been at war.
Picard. Who in the world thinks Kirk is the better captain? It blows my mind.
I'm a Picard guy myself, but yeah, we may have just
yes.
we may have just
go in the comments. Make this the weirdest comment section ever. We're talking D&D, but fuck that. Who's the best Star Trek captain?
But well, yeah, drop that in the comments. But there is another analogy that I actually kind of think does graft over on the OSR side and is pertinent to kind of what you're talking about with regard to kind of the way in which the game's teaching you, the way in which that ethos is. I've heard said on numerous occasions that like Star Wars is effectively a dogfight, whereas Star Trek is more like submarine warfare. You're talking about minute. That
okay, I've never heard this before.
That was not my analogy. I've heard it from a number of people.
Okay,
but there's a level of meticulousness there. Now, however well that grafts to Star Wars, Star Trek, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Let's go down that rabbit hole. Here we go. No, just kidding.
No, but I really do think that there is something to be said for the difference between kicking down a door and going like,
let's do this shit.
We might be outmatched here, guys. Let's fuck them up.
Right. Like, okay, we'll have to use those slightly more powers than we might have wanted to use, but we'll still kill them.
Versus stealthily opening the door, listening to the door, and going like, shit, guys, it's a pit viper. Retreat! Right.
Or just like, oh, this room's perfectly safe. What's this? Oh, let's go investigate. Oh, wait, that drops like a mummy hand or something. That's, shit, fuck that, man.
Yeah. So I really do think that there is and this applies, I think, across the game, a level of the meticulous nature, whether it be management of resources, whether it be the way in which you interact with the world, your decision making, not in combat, but whether you will be in combat. I mean, there's, I think, so much of that lends to a more cautious experience and an experience that rapidly you just can't have it another way. I mean, if you choose to be cavalier, you often will pay a price for that, and in some cases that price is your character gone.
Yeah, where's your backup character? Yeah,
and I think one thing that we really can't speak to, but I mean I think we can just in general terms, but given this dipping of the toes that we did for to be able to have this video. What I love as a DM is that when you get that character to level 5, you're not necessarily on easy street then, and now you're a character
now you're invested.
To. You're invested, and now you have to think about going into that dungeon and how you're going to interact with that space, knowing that you've got
how many
sessions, of a character who like that. Now, I've had numerous people in the comments saying that there is a curve to OSR as well. Where you're going to find things much less lethal than they were when you first started out. That goes for both systems, but obviously 5th edition is much, much, much less so. But I think as a DM, the system is handing you so many gifts by having inculcated into your players.
Good word.
This natural and proper understanding of their own mortality, and that's something that 5th edition does a really poor job. Of doing. And again, I would say that's even with us running a reasonably modified version of 5th edition. But I just think at its core, 5th edition isn't designed to deliver that experience, and it doesn't. It doesn't deliver it well.
I think it's a totally different experience. It's you are in the world of D&D, but I think that there's so much different games. Like it's hard to consider. Like yeah, they're D&D, they're umbrella games, but it's like one is a turn-based strategy game and one is a hack and slash. Like I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think they are that.
Yeah.
By genre, they are almost that different of animals,
and can be both in preach. Like I don't. Again, I think.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I
appreciate both of them.
Yeah,
They
I'll
both
happily
offer.
sit down and play either of
Yeah,
those. Whether it be,
absolutely.
in the video game.
Fuck Zork. Fuck all that shit. I'm really bad at that. God, like King's Quest and Space Quest. Did you ever play those games?
Yeah. King's Quest was my shit growing
dude.
up.
I never beat those things until like GameFAQs came around and I had the dial-up modem and I can finally beat this game.
Written down the cliff notes of
exactly. I was like, I can never. Oh, dude, we bought this strategy, guys. That's how bad I was at these games. Yeah.
I know. I mean, this to me felt like it was kind of an abbreviated look. But again, the call really was they wanted to hear. So I was hoping maybe you could just kind of end this out with a summary of your experience, kind of expectation versus reality.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think any of us went into this going. I certainly didn't go into this going like I'm winning over my table to convert, but I think, and this transcends just the old school modern conversation. This goes out to every TTRPG system out there. There are great things to take away from them. So wrap us up with just kind of your
overall feelings.
Your thoughts and feelings of your experience.
Yeah, so I think the point of any of these tabletop RPGs is, did you have fun? I had fun. So in that case, I enjoyed myself. Is it something I am I like fuck 5e? No, I'm sorry, guy. I'm sorry. I still like 5e. I like the story building aspects. But there is so much you hit on, like separate the wheat from the chaff. Like you might like some stuff of this. Why not incorporate it into your game?
Right.
It's
and I don't know that we outlined this well enough in the first video either, is because we were actually having this conversation just before we shot this video. I actually it's a bit misleading, just in the fact that I don't think we've ever played a rules as written session of 5th edition.
Yeah, no. No, we never have. From the very beginning. I can
guarantee there hasn't been one time we've said. And so to some extent, we're kind of comparing OSR, and I will say raw, because I went to great lengths to make sure that we weren't tweaking anything. I really wanted to make sure that you guys were getting straight out of the book experience.
It's pure
uncut, unadulterated.
Oh,
sweet,
that's sweet.
Old school.
Blue Crystal.
I think we're talking about something different.
Oops, sorry. Apologies.
But to what I would say is a highly adulterated 5th edition, and much of which is adulterated in the sense of there are many things I like about old school and so take that with the grain of salt.
But no, I had a great time. If I were to advise anyone who's like a 5th edition table, it's like, hey, let's check out this stuff. If you're a player, you need to learn, which means don't be afraid. I think we spent a lot of time being afraid of everything because we understood what the world meant.
Well, before you wrap your deal, because I think that is something I intended to touch on, and
let's go down that
hugely important is I was actually very surprised by the level of caution that you guys. Now I think everyone at the table, they understand what old school is by kind of tone. They you hadn't played it, but everyone showed up with their OSR faces on. You didn't just run in like
no, we were 5e. No.
So I was actually blown away by the level of caution you guys exhibited.
So maybe,
and I think, but I actually think exactly what you were starting to say. If you're a brand new player, just like 5e taught you lessons when you were learning that system, let OSR teach its own lessons, because
it's a different way.
They're going to be more poignant lessons, and that might mean, that might mean sometimes acting a little more cavalier than, and again, like I said, those are lessons you will learn rapidly. Right. But I will note, I think you guys came into the adventure with your old school game faces on, because you were exhibiting a lot of what I would consider to be good practices.
Right. Well, it's like, the first time you get into a fight, you're freaking out. You're like, oh my God, am I going to hit? And then, once you get some like, you realize like, hey, if you're sparring, right, you never want to get hit. But when you're sparring, you're like, no, I need to understand what this is like. I need to experience failures. That's the benefit of sparring.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Continue going. I just had meant to touch on the fact that, I think the caricature that everyone wants to hold in their mind is the three of you literally shoulder down a door and just start swinging and running through the dungeon.
Yeah, no, we did not do that.
It was quite the opposite.
Yeah.
And so,
but I enjoyed myself. It was a totally different gameplay. Same world, same basic idea, but different mechanics, different way of exploring. Would I could do it again? Maybe.
Well, I guess here's the kind of the two or the big takeaway, I guess I would be curious is of the entire experience, what was your least favorite aspect of it? I'm going to ask the inverse question in a second, so you can be
too, absolutely.
But basically, what was something that you went like, I wouldn't mind seeing that dragged over to the 5th edition side, or I know I definitely don't want that, in our regular games.
I hate to say it. It's because I think you hit it. Like, I just am not versed in it. It's a weakness because I haven't had the experience. The exploration for me was not fun. Like, that's a lie. It was interesting. I didn't know the rules, and I never was able to fully master the rules, so that it was always a little frustrating for me.
Gotcha.
So that was hard, especially if you're a 5e player. Like, if you go into an RSR, like, it is, unless you're really like, it just depends on who you are. But for me personally, I did not enjoy, like, I have no idea what the fuck to do, and you're not helping me, DM. You're no longer a DM. You're just a fucking referee. And I have to figure this shit out by myself, and I can't roll dice. That was a little frustrating. I understand that is kind of the whole point of OSR, and I don't want to downplay that. And I understand I could learn through experience. But my favorite thing, I still like the tactics in either game. I like 5e tactics and I like OSR tactics.
So just it was a different way of thinking.
Like
about
I say,
it's
a turn-based, the XCOM, fucking great game, or like a Diablo, like hack and slash. They're different games, and I enjoy them both. Yeah. So,
well, I think too that because that's one of your favorite parts of the game. It doesn't surprise me that you're not an immediate convert, because there's a huge emphasis on maybe not finding yourself in a tactical combat in old school. I mean, you if you can avoid that,
yes,
that's probably.
But
best.
there's also tactics in avoiding as well.
Oh no!
So
doubt,
like
no
this, you're playing. God, do you ever play Commandos?
Yeah.
So that kind of thing where you're sneaking, taking out the guy, and dragging the body behind some things so no one can see him.
I know exactly. Like the 400 times that happens.
I know, right? Oh, I love that game.
Cool game. Pretty tough game, too.
Oh, yeah. I think I only played Commandos, too. Anyway, but yeah, and I did, like, the freeing aspect was really, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed really getting into, we got into character hard.
Yeah. I think you guys really strapped up.
We're like, hey, can we bring some 5e into? And we did by, like, let's embrace our stats and our, like, all the random stuff that happened. And who's going to come out at the end of that? And that we had fun playing that character. Yeah.
And like I said, I think you guys really did a good job of just jumping into characters that, again, you really did not have the level of control or agency in designing the way you would in 5th edition.
I guess if you're like, maybe for OSR people are like, hey, as a 5e player, I say that's a really fun place to explore. And I don't know if you are at your table, that might be something, bring in some 5e to your OSR. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. Anything else, man? I don't know.
No, I like I said, I thought it was I'm hesitant to use the word experiment, because it was more or less just running some more D&D.
Experience,
it was
baby.
An experience. There you go. No, I had a really good time running it. It's been a long time since I've run any modules. So it was that was an interesting experience on the DM side. And like I said, it was cool sitting at the table with people I've sat with hundreds and hundreds of sessions, over the years, and to just be able to kind of see you guys engage in that space in a new light.
Yeah, for sure. It was fun.
But beyond that, I'm sure that there's all sorts of things that we are not hitting on and doing justice here.
Right.
Again, the original video, unbelievable engagement in the comments.
Yes, thanks again.
For those of you who, so many of those people were existing on both sides, running or playing on both sides of the old school, new school gap. But I'd love to hear it. Drop it down in the comments.
Yeah.
Certainly, if you guys had any questions, like I said, this whole video came on the heels of us being asked to produce it. If you have any other questions, about what that experience was, I mean, you guys know how it is. We're trying to stay at a certain elevation view here, but I'd love to hear them down in the comments.
100%.
You got anything else for the people?
No, you just stay. You just stay being you. That's what I gotta say.
There you go. I think it's time to sign this one off.
How do you want to do it?
Could you?
I'm scared. I'm not scared.
Could you? I know he is departed now, but could Balin Smith?
Can Balin Smith come back?
The
Total dick.
The smartest character to ever be strangled by a mummy hand. If you would let the people know who the world belongs to.
Well, it's been fantastic. What? I need another drink. Yes. Ah, God, peasants are so annoying, aren't they? But I want to thank you all, and I just want you to know that you might think that the world is yours, but no, the world is mine.